I had a subscriber that wrote in, and I apologize for not having the question on the screen, but if you have a question that you would like answered on a future episode, you can submit them on Instagram or Twitter. And he asked, JT, how do you feel the Pittsburgh Steelers season is going to go in the AFC North for 2023? And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers definitely should be a playoff team. Yes, this is probably the toughest division in the NFL. The Cleveland Browns are really good. The Bengals and Ravens pretty much look like Super Bowl caliber teams. And for the Steelers, there are many fans who expect this team to be competing for either third or fourth place in this division. But despite Pittsburgh not being the most talented team in this division, they still do have Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin, without a doubt, is the best coach in this division. And as long as the Steelers have Mike Tomlin, I expect this team to be competing for a spot in the playoffs. And when you look at what the Steelers acquired this offseason, when it comes to offensive line additions, you bring in a really talented offensive lineman from Philadelphia. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I'm going to have a really difficult time pronouncing it. But they also do bring in another offensive guard in Nate Herberg, and then you draft left tackle out of Georgia in the first round, Broderick Jones. So this offensive line should be really good. On top of that, you already got Chuck Okorafor at right tackle. You got James Daniels at right guard. So this should be a really good offensive line. And the nickname that people are giving this offensive line this season is the Picket Fence. And one thing that really held back Pittsburgh's offense last year was most definitely this offensive line. The offensive line play for the last couple of years in Pittsburgh has not really been all that good. It's been a little bit of a rebuild when it comes to getting this offensive line up to par. But this is probably the most talented offensive line that the Steelers have had in the last couple of years. And you look at the talent that the Steelers have at the wide receiver position. You trade for Allen Robinson. You also have George Pickens, who is expected to have a breakout season this year. You have Deontay Johnson, one of the more underrated wide receivers in the game. Kenny Pickett has all the weapons in the passing game that is needed for him to have a big second year. And then we can't forget about tight end Pratt Freiermuth. He's going to have a really big role in this offense. You also did draft Darnell Washington out of Georgia, who is kind of like another offensive lineman when he's on the field. This dude is a bowling ball on the offense when he ends up coming in on obvious running situations. He's going to be like an additional offensive lineman. He also does have the upside to become a really good addition in the passing game if he ends up developing his ability to catch the football. He did have a good amount of drops during his time at Georgia, but this dude has incredible size. He's a fantastic athlete. We can't forget about Najee Harris, and then you had the emergence of Jaylen Warren during the second half of last year. So this should be a really good offense. My only concern that I have with the Steelers offense going into 2023 is going to be the guy calling the plays, who is Matt Canada. Now, as most Steelers fans know, Matt Canada is not really a good offensive coordinator, and I'm not really somebody to come on here and critique play calling because calling plays is really hard to do. But for Matt Canada, there's a large chance that his play calling could hold back this Steelers offense from being better than what it can be under a new OC. But one thing about Mike Tomlin is that I trust his judgment. This is somebody who has yet to have a losing season in all his years being the head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I trust his judgment in bringing back Matt Canada. And a lot of you guys have to remember that the key to a young quarterback being successful not just is about the team that he has around him, but also making sure that you have stability and continuity on the coaching staff, which is probably the main reason why Mike Tomlin retained Matt Canada. He didn't want Kenny Pickett to go into year two under a new OC, having to learn a new system. So he wanted to make things a little bit easier for Kenny Pickett going into his sophomore season by retaining the OC. Now, if Kenny Pickett ends up not having a great year and this offense struggles, I expect for Matt Canada to end up being gone once the season ends. But last season, near the second half of the year, we did see this offense start to improve dramatically. The play calling did get slightly better in my opinion. So I do think at best this should be an above average offense. There are many people who aren't really big believers in Kenny Pickett. They go and they judge him based on the stats. But if you actually watch the games, during the second half of last year, Kenny Pickett was really phenomenal. He led the Steelers to several fourth quarter comebacks against the Raiders, which is the one that really comes to mind. I mean, this dude, in big moments of big games, he found ways to make plays. And one thing that has always impressed me about Kenny Pickett is that this guy never seems to get rattled. It doesn't matter how he starts a game off. When it comes time to make plays in crunch time, this guy steps up and he balls out. Now on defense, this defense is absolutely phenomenal. I think that this is one of the better defenses that the Steelers have had going into any season. At cornerback, you have one of the better cornerbacks coming out of this past year's draft, and Joey Porter Jr. Many people expected him to be a first-round pick. I was not expecting this guy to be available in the second round. I was really excited when the Steelers picked him up. They signed Patrick Peterson, which many Steeler fans are really optimistic about what Patrick Peterson is going to bring to this defense. Not only are you going to have a veteran in the locker room that's going to be able to help and mentor Joey Porter Jr., but you also have somebody who's coming off a really solid season and last year with Minnesota. But my main concern with Patrick Peterson is that I don't think he's as good as what many Steeler fans are thinking. You see, many Steeler fans still think that Patrick Peterson is one of the better cornerbacks in the league based on how many interceptions he had with Minnesota. But in the few Minnesota Vikings games that I watched Patrick Peterson play in, ideally when they played the New York Giants in the regular season and in the wild card round, he got absolutely shredded by Isaiah Hodgins. And for those of you guys who don't know who Isaiah Hodgins is, this was somebody who was on the damn practice squad prior to getting picked up by the New York Giants. And I don't know if many Steeler fans don't have my kind of suspicion that Patrick Peterson is starting to decline at a really rapid level, but I don't really share the optimism that many Steeler fans have when it comes to Patrick Peterson. I don't think he's going to be all that good. I think he's going to be serviceable, but I definitely don't think he's going to give you the kind of cornerback play that you were getting out of a guy like Cam Sutton, who signed with the Detroit Lions in free agency. So I don't really have a lot of confidence that Patrick Peterson is going to be all that great for the Steelers this year. Now, I could be wrong, and a lot of Pittsburgh fans probably are going to disagree with me on this, but I don't think Patrick Peterson is going to be super good. Okay, I think at best he's going to be average, maybe above average at times, but I'm not expecting a lot out of Patrick Peterson this year. I am really excited about the safety position. We already know what Minkah Fitzpatrick brings to the table. He's arguably the best safety in the NFL, but you also finally get rid of Terrell Edmunds. I was looking forward to Terrell Edmunds finally going elsewhere. I'm glad he's off the team. You have DeMonte Casey. You also do have Keanu Neal, who you signed in free agency. And Keanu Neal, I think, is going to be a really interesting piece to this defense because not only can he play safety, but he also can be used as a hybrid linebacker at times. And at the linebacker position, you signed Elandon Roberts, Cole Holcomb from Washington, who was a really good player for the Commanders last season. This defense should be pretty good, despite my concerns that I have about Patrick Peterson. Now, this defensive line is going to be absolutely phenomenal. You have Larry Ogunjobi, who was really productive last year. We still know what Cam Hayward brings to the table. Despite the fact that he's getting up there in age, it seems like he's getting better every single season. The older he gets, the better he plays, in my opinion. He's still one of the better interior defensive linemen that we have in the game right now. TJ Watt missed a good amount of last season due to injury, but when he came back, this Steelers defense was really good. And then we had the emergence of Alex Highsmith, who is looking to get paid. So this defense is going to be really good. And you're going to need this defense to be really good when you're going against the juggernaut offenses that the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens are going to be putting on the field this year. And my expectations for the Steelers this year is for them to be around 9 to 10 wins. That's how good I feel the Steelers can be this year. And if the Steelers get to the playoffs, I do feel they have the ability to maybe win a first round game and potentially make it to the divisional round of the playoffs. But ultimately, I think that this team, having Mike Tomlin as their head coach, they're going to be elevated. We know that Mike Tomlin, for the last couple of years, he has overachieved as the head coach in Pittsburgh. Many people have said year after year after year in the offseason that the Steelers were going to have a losing season. And always, Mike Tomlin ends up proving those doubters wrong and finds a way to have a winning record. And this year, I expect no differently. There are a lot of fans out there who think that the Steelers are going to end up finishing in last place in the AFC North, maybe behind the Cleveland Browns or whoever, but I have a lot of confidence in Mike Tomlin. And although I don't really like his decision to retain Matt Canada, I do understand it. It does make a lot of sense when you look at how young quarterbacks develop. Oftentimes, young quarterbacks are really good when you have the same guys on the coaching staff. Anytime you have a young quarterback, you don't want him having to learn a new system year after year after year. And with retaining Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett is going to have the opportunity to continue to grow in this system. He's going to have a better grasp of the offense, and he's going to be more comfortable. And for Kenny Pickett, he's been putting a lot of work in this offseason with his teammates. He also recently was on Ben Roethlisberger's podcast not too long ago. He talked about how in the 2-minute drill, at times he wasn't all that comfortable, but with that, is something that has to be developed with more experience and more in-game action. And I think we're going to see a really better version of Kenny Pickett in 2023 as opposed to what we saw out of him his rookie season. I think many people have Kenny Pickett a little bit messed up. They just they look at his stats, and they don't really watch the games. But when Kenny Pickett played in the second half of the year, the Steelers only lost 2 games. This was one of the more hotter teams in the NFL to close off the end of the regular season last year, and I expect that hot streak to continue with Kenny Pickett getting better every single week. Every game that I watched out of Kenny Pickett last season, the guy improved. I remember when he first came in during the first month that he was the starter, he struggled against the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets. I mean, what do you expect when you're going to get some of the best defenses in the NFL? And when you go back and you look at the Miami Dolphins game, he had 3 interceptions in that game. But despite throwing 3 interceptions, the Steelers still had an opportunity to win that football game. And the thing with Kenny Pickett, when I look at his mistakes, a lot of them, in my viewpoint, came from him just trying to do a little bit too much with the football. Now, recently, Alex Rollins came out with a video that kind of disturbed me. Kenny Pickett wasn't really the greatest against zone coverage, but I really think that Kenny Pickett is going to be way better this season with the work that he's been putting in this offseason and the fact that he has Mike Tomlin as his head coach. So I'm expecting the Pittsburgh Steelers to be a really good team this year. Now, is this team going to compete for a Super Bowl, or are they going to make a Cinderella run in the playoffs? I strongly doubt it. But with everything that the Steelers have brought in this offseason, improving the offensive line, having a really good group of weapons around Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, I think that Kenny Pickett should have a really good second season for Pittsburgh. And how successful the Steelers are going to be this year is largely going to be on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett. I don't think that this is a division anymore where you can just be as good as a coach as Mike Tomlin is and not have somewhat decent quarterback play. If Kenny Pickett doesn't improve this year and he still plays the same way that he did his rookie season, I don't think the Steelers are going to go all that far. But I do have a lot of confidence in Kenny Pickett going into this year. And with how tough this division is, you have to play the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns twice. You're going to need good quarterback play and able to have a winning record this season. And I think that the Steelers are going to be able to get that in Kenny Pickett this season. And I think that the Steelers should at least be able to make it into the wild card round of this year's playoffs. And if they don't make it to the playoffs, they should at least be able to win 9 games. Yes, this division is really tough, but it's not like you don't have the best coach in the AFC North. Despite how talented the Baltimore Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals are, Mike Tomlin still without a doubt is one of the best coaches in the NFL. So I have a lot of faith in Mike Tomlin this season. I like the additions that the Steelers have brought in via free agency and the draft, and I think the Steelers should at least be able to be a playoff football team in 2023.